Okay, Dad, we're gonna do an interview, and what we want to do it in a chronological. So we're gonna start with where you can remember the earliest your earliest remembrance of after when you were born, your earliest remembrance. So you can start there and come forward. Go ahead.
Okay, when I was born in an area we call Ringo, Louisiana, we were about 8 miles southeast of Ringo in Bienva Parish, bordering the Red River Parish line. It, during my earlier years, as I can remember, we like all children. The biggest thing we did was play, and some of the games we played was what we called jacks. We didn't have any jacks; we had rocks, and that's how we entertain ourselves. And we didn't have no ball. Mama would perhaps take a rubber ball, sew it up with some rags and thread, and that was our ball. And if we got a ball, it was because some of the players had disbanded the ball and the cover was back gone, but Mama would sew it back together and we would play ball. Didn't have no bat. We pick up whatever we could find and bat. We reared on a farm, and my daddy had 80 acres. I remember not being able to do any work on the farm. We would always go out and be with the adults and whatever they might be doing. On the farm, we raised a little bit of everything. Biggest thing at that particular time was king cotton. We had cotton, corn, peas, peanuts, and we called it ribbon cane, or if, depending on where you were, they called it sugar cane. We also had sorghum cane, and then they had another one called POJ cane. And during the harvest time, and we got big enough to pick cotton, we picked cotton if we were fortunate enough to have any. And some occasion, sometime, Papa would allow us to go to when we picked the cotton, go to the gin, to pick the cotton, go to gin the cotton. During that time, there was little or no money. Papa would borrow enough money to make a crop on, and a lot of times you'd mortgage the cotton crop against the debt. In a lot of instances, we didn't make enough, and he would also, if you plant peas and peanuts, which would enhance the land and put some of the nutrient back in the land, the government will pay you to do that. Uh, that was the biggest money that we would get during the fall of the year.
What what time did y'all go to school during the harvest time? Did y'all go to school during that time?
School was started somewhere around about the 1st of November, and it would end the latter part of February. During that time, it's based on what on the plantation. That's what they did, and they allowed all of us, all Negro school, would be based on that time, because at the end of say October or beginning of November, crops were harvested, and then then the beginning of the season for getting ready to plant new crop, you start somewhere around about the 1st of March, and that's when we start school again. And in our school, we never had over 2 teachers. Half the time we didn't have but 1 teacher. The teacher had 7 grades. You can imagine how often we got around to each subject, because we had reading and spelling, arithmetic, English, health, and geography, and history. Those are the basic subjects that we had.
Your school was your school in your community? What was the name of your community, Dad?
Community we call the school we call Center, and reading the read is usually named as Center because it more or less is in the center of the community. That's why they call it Center. It didn't have no particular name. It just depended on what church you belong. If you took the name, you may take your name after your church. You could say, well, I live near St. Matthew, or I live near New Star, or I live near Evergreen.
Okay, now after y'all what were your junior high years like and high school years like?
We had only two schools. You either in the elementary school or you in high school. Elementary school was 7 years, and high school went from the 7th grade through the 11th grade. My high school, I went to Ringo to the first year, and that was at 11th grade. After that year, I left and went to St. Louis, Missouri, to stay with my brother, and I finished high school there.
During that 11th grade year, did you have to walk to school, or how did you get to school, get to Rango?
During the years, basically we walked. Now, when I was going to high school, there in Ringo, I was able to stay with one of our cousins, and even at that, we still had 2 miles to walk. And when we were in elementary school, we walked every day. And unless it was raining where the creek was kind of flooded, and Papa would take us in the wagon to school.
How long would that journey take?
To get to school?
Get to school.
About 40 minutes.
To Rango.
To Ringo, if you were fortunate enough to walk, it took you a good 2 hours.
Okay.
Sometimes we rode a bicycle, and sometimes the chain would break, so you have to push the bicycle the rest of the way.
Okay, now you mentioned your games y'all played. What are some of the favorite games that you had besides, you mentioned baseball? What other childhood games that you remember playing?
Well, we played hide and go seek, and that was one of them. And we also played cowboys and Indian, and we always played hunting animal. It was 3 of us, and one would be the hunter, one would be the dog, and the other would be the game. And he climbed up a tree, depending on what kind of game he was, and we cut the tree down, and he in it.
So you got fond memories of your childhood.
Oh yes, those were some good days.
Okay, then you moved to St. Louis. At what age did you move to St. Louis?
I was about 16 years old at that time when I went to St. Louis.
Okay. What was the reason you went from Ringo to St. Louis?
Well, they said that opportunity for the education was a lot better. Transportation wouldn't be a problem. And they had more subjects that you would be able to select and to study.
Okay. What was your biggest impression about getting to St. Louis other than being in the city? What impressed you more?
Big lights, taxi cabs, streetcars.
You mentioned some people that you met when you were in St. Louis. What about those? Give us some of those names of some people that stood out, still stand with you, or stood out in your mind at the time.
One of them was I can't think of his name right now, but he was in architecture, and he's the one that they said the more that laid St. Louis out. I was impressed with him, and we used to live in one of his apartments, and he tried to get me to go into that. I was unfamiliar with it. When I went to his office, I saw all them what I call little uh, pointed objects in a cup. I didn't understand it, wasn't interested. But he would always encourage me. He said, Monroe, you need to get into this. You will do well.
So what did you do after? How was your social life or your life outside of school? What was that about?
It really wasn't too much because after school, I'd work in after school, find a job and work in the afternoon, and that's that about the biggest thing. Very seldom when I went anywhere. Sometime I did, and most time I didn't.
What kind of jobs did you have?
Well, I worked at various jobs. I used to pinch hit, substitute some of the guys, especially on the weekend. If they were working at a hotel, they want to go somewhere. I substitute down there as a waiter, something like that. And I also got a job in the afternoon working for a private family. And one of them was the Smileys. He was a shoe manufacturer.
So what did, when you were doing that and then you finished high school there in St. Louis, what did you do after you finished high school there?
Well, after I finished high school, there I started the school going to Stowe Teachers College, and I stayed there until I was in a recess place. Say we were playing basketball, and I got injured in my eye, and I got to where I couldn't have seen, so I withdrew, and I came back to Ringo.
Okay. Now, who were you living with in St. Louis?
I started off living with my brother, and he left and went to California, so I started living with his wife's sister. Then after that, I would come home every summer, so I had a first cousin. After that, I went back and I stayed with them until I finished high school.
Okay. Okay, now you came back. What year did you come back to Louisiana?
I came back. Well, I was drafted while I was in St. Louis in high school, and I drafted into the Navy. And I didn't finish high school until after I was discharged from the Navy and came back home.
Okay. So you finished and came back to St. Louis and finished high school, or came back to Louisiana and finished?
I came back to St. Louis
and finished.
And finished high school.
Okay. What drew you back to Louisiana?
There's an expression that says there is no place like home. And looked like I couldn't find what I wanted. And things just weren't shaping up like I wanted, so I came back.
Okay. So what you do once you got back?
Well, I enrolled in school. I attended Grambling State University, and also in the summer I would attended school in Southern.
Okay. What were you? What was your study? What was your curriculum?
Well, the program was designed to equip you to become a teacher, and so those just what we call general studies.
What time did you meet your wife?
I met her one summer. I had come home and had went to visit one of my cousins, and the place was called Iron Spring, and that was in Ashland, Louisiana, and they had and he said he knew where some girls were in a place called Chestnut, Louisiana, and so we went down there, and behold, there she was.
Was it love at first sight?
No, it was ignore me at first sight. No, I was not included in the conversation with nobody until my brother. It was one of the men that raised in Ringo where I was. He was there, but I didn't know it at the time. So he came out a couple of hours later because he was asleep, and he recognized me, and he wanted to know did I still living in Chicago? I said no, St. Louis. And then all of a sudden I became the mouthpiece. Nobody would shut up. Everybody want to know who I was, where I come from, what was I doing down there.
Okay.
And
Okay, now give us some. You talked about joining the Navy. What was that experience like for you?
On the land, I did fine. But once I was assigned to a ship, during the period of time when the seas were rough, I stayed seasick. And basically, as long as the sea was calm, I was fine. But otherwise, when that sea was rough, I had a hard time.
Did you? What places did you travel to outside the United States, or even in the United States?
Well, I had my training in Bainbridge, Maryland. I came home for a 2 week furlough, and when I went back, I was transferred to Camp Pendleton. That was in San Diego, California. And then they put me on what we call a troop transport ship. And we went to Yokohama, Japan to pick up the soldiers. During that time, the war was over. And so they were sending ships to go there and transfer and bring them back home. And that's one of the ships that I was on and brought them back.
Okay, so when you, after you came back, did you discharge out of the service? Did they try to get you to re-up or what?
Oh yeah, they were always trying to do that. And one of the techniques that they would use on you, he said, now, you in here until the duration, you don't know when that's going to be, and you will not be declared to the war is over duration until Congress decides it. Why don't you just re-up for say another 4 years? I didn't want to do it because I wasn't getting no place. I wasn't learning. There was no learning situation, and so I decided to just wait until they take a chance on me getting out sooner. After we left there, we went there where we started out, going to Okinawa, and then they sent us back where we really wound up in Beaumont, Texas. And so they were going to decommission that ship. Then they transferred me to New Orleans. And so I was there for about 2 months. And so they sent me back on another ship called the USS Ransom. And that was a minesweeper. And so they told us that we were going to Iwo Jima. I tried to get out of it, but it was to no avail. And I guess we were out about 2 days, then they told us to turn and go back through the Panama Canal. We went through the canal zone and we proceeded to Alabama. Then they told us had to go to Orange, Texas. I didn't know what that was all about, but the guys on the ship was jumping for joy. I asked, well, so what y'all so happy about? Said they ain't gonna run this ship no more. They saying this to the graveyard. And so when I got there, they gave word out that anybody who wanted to be discharged and go home could. I was the first one raised my hand.
So once you got out, then where did you come? You come back to Rango or what?
I came back to Rango and I went back to St. Louis.
Okay.
And that's where I finished high school at.
Okay. Okay, after finishing high school, then you decided to come back to Louisiana?
Yes, that's when I got hurt.
Okay.
And I couldn't have seen. I was gonna come home, recuperate, I hope, but I didn't.
Okay. Okay. Now, what was the impression, the biggest impression about the war since you were in the war? Was it Pearl Harbor or any of those other events that stood out in your mind?
Yeah, Pearl Harbor was because I had a chance when we left St. Pendleton. About 3 or 4 days out, we ran into a storm, and it knocked out some of the engine on the ship, and so we had to go to Pearl Harbor for repairs. Pearl Harbor was bombed out everywhere. Those ships that you saw on TV, I had a chance to get on them. Got out there and stood on them where they had been where they had been in that water. It wasn't completely merged, but they partly merged, and there was no place to go other than to do anything or see anything. They had some little places there that the people had little shops, make pictures or something like that. But basically, Pearl Harbor was all bombed out.
Mm. Okay, well, I was just thinking now, when you were, I'm gonna go back a little bit, when you were raised up in Rango, were y'all independent? Did y'all have y'all own, were y'all sharecroppers, or y'all had y'all own land, or what?
Yeah, we were independent. Papa had 80 acres of land. We had 3 mules. We had cows and mules, chickens, turkeys, and we basically raised everything that we ate. And we had a garden, and they canned during the summertime. They did a lot of canning. And in the fall of the year, you made syrup, and basically the community was self-sustaining of its own self, because we had people that were living in there that, for trades concerned. We had carpenters, and wells was important. We had people who could dig wells. We had a blacksmith, and we had people that could fire your saw when you was cutting wood. And but anything that we needed, there was somebody in the community that could do that.
What were race relations like?
If you were independent and you stood up for yourself, you did fairly well. It is when you had to stay on no plantation that you had to knuckle and bend over and bow down. But otherwise, they didn't bother you.
Okay, after...
What were your relationships with white people? What were your relationships with other white people in your family?
I had a good relationship with them, and one girl, and she was a white girl, and we didn't have no wagon, and she wanted, when her dad would come down there, she'd make him put the wagon in the truck and bring it down there so we could ride and play in the wagon. And I said, our parents was kind of skeptical. Said, don't be in a hurry. No, we get her in that wagon a lot of time and run down and turn the corner. Sometimes they throw out all that dirt and sand. We'd have rush hour. We'd all get back and take turns and riding in that wagon. We had a good relationship with them. Sure did.
Give us your understanding of the Bonnie Clyde experience what you knew about Bonnie and Clyde?
Bonnie and Clyde stayed just across the lake from where we lived, and they lived with a man. His name Mifflin. He had a sawmill, and his son ran with him. Bonnie and Clyde came to our house one night, and they wanted some chicken. And my daddy stayed out there with them. He was out there for quite a while. And so we came back in, and he had $3. They bought 2 chickens. And chickens at that time, you get them for 15 to 25 cents each. It had to be them because Papa didn't have no money when he went out there. And when he came back in, Mama says, "Who was that?" She said, "They told us they were Bonnie and Clyde." And it wasn't long after then that they had set up a bushwhack and killed them.
Now, the story that you know and the story that's was printed, do they coincide, or do you know a different version than what normally is being printed about Bonnie and Clyde?
Yeah, Bonnie and Clyde were moving in that area like any normal person would. Nobody they knew who they were. Bonnie and Clyde wasn't bothering none of them. And they always traveled fast. The Lord was after them. So there was a Texas Ranger came down there to set up a way where they could get them. And what they did, they studied their travel, where they travel often. And they were going to bushwhack them. And now the man's son, they were going to get him too. But the man didn't want his son to bother. He said, "You gonna help us." And what he did, he got at the base of a hill, faked a flat, and Bonnie and Clyde came by there, and he stopped to help them. They knew he would. And then when he left to go climb that hill, at that time it was nothing but gravel roads. And they would point a poise on the side of the road in the woods. And when they started up that hill, they fired on them.
And you had some documentations of that.
Yes, I did. I had a paper. I misplaced the paper, but I had the documentation there.
Tell us about your mother and her mother, Cora. I think her mother was Cora. Was your grandmother named Cora or what? What was your grandmother's name? Your mother's name was Viola.
My Viola.
What was her mother's name?
I don't remember that.
Okay. Do you remember her at all?
Yeah, I do.
What do you remember about her?
She was, when I came to know her, she was way up in her 80s. And she was reared in a white family. And she took care of them. She had 2 boys, and it was the Wembley family. And when she became incapacitated and couldn't do anything, they took her in. And
Your grandmother?
My grandmother, and waited on her. Both of them became doctors. And of course, she, but the rest of the time she wasn't with them, she stayed with her son. But a lot of times, her name was Ellen. Her name was Ellen. And when they got lonesome for Aunt Ellen, they go get her. And they may keep her for 3-4 months. And they would, and when she became ill, one would come one day to see her, and the other would come the next day to see her. And they did that until she died. And the Wembley was not prejudiced. they were true to what they said. I remember in one instance, it was a man that lived next to us who used to live on the river. He was quite wealthy. Back there, people measured your wealth according to what you had. He came up, he bought about 800 acres of land. He had about 25 head of mules, a lot of cows, and a lot of fowl, ducks, geese, chickens, turkeys. He had all of that. And his son had gotten in trouble with the people on the river, and they still weren't satisfied, so they came up there and took all he had from him. The two doctors from Wembley that my grandmother was raised in, one was called Big Doc and Little Doc. So Big Doc formed him a mob crowd, and he had Negroes in it, and they marched back down there and took all that stuff back from the Ku Klux Klan and marched it back up there.
What do you remember about your mama? What you remember about your mama?
Mama was a disciplinarian, and I stayed on her hit list quite often. I either was doing something or saying something I had no business saying. But she was loving. She make sure we were clean, and she provided for us every year. And I never did know what she called my daddy. Matra. I don't know what it was. I tried to ask her. You heard what I said. She would tell me what it is. I think she was saying Mr. Raz, but I didn't know. But anyway, he would plant 3 acres of cotton. Whatever that made, that before our winter clothes, we're going to get 2 pair of overalls, 2 jumpers, 2 dungaree shirts, and a pair of brogan shoes, and that was going to be for our winter clothing. And that's how we was. She was able to. They were able to win us through the season.
Your mother was sort of a mortician.
She was. We had an incident in the community where this it was 2 brothers and a cousin, and then we had a first cousin. They all were working in the timber business, sawing logs. Well, these 2 brothers and the first cousin came to their house one night while our cousin was away. Well, nobody was there at that house but the mother and her 2 daughters. They went in there to rob them, and they had a mask on. She jerked the mask off their faces, and so they killed her. They killed her and her oldest daughter, and they split their heads open with an axe. And during that period, we didn't have no mortician, and so my mama became the mortician. She banded her head back together, and they did what people did back there, and prepared them for the grave. But she did till she took care of that situation.
And your mother died young in your life. What age were you when she passed?
I was about 15 when she passed. She passed on George Washington's birthday, 1942.
So you have a good remembrance of her.
Oh yes, indeed. I never will forget one time she told me. She says, "I don't know what I had done." She told me she was gonna kill her, and she picked up a club. I just knew she was, and crossed the woods I went. I didn't know where I was going. All I knew I was running away. And I knew she'd kill me. I said my sister's boy was there. He and my baby brother, they caught me and held me until my daddy came. We wouldn't let my mama get me caught. I was scared to death. And he told me, she's not going to kill you. No. I said, it took a long time to call me now because I knew she was going to kill me.
You had an older sister.
I did. I remember her. She died when I was really young. I was probably between 5 or 6 years old when she passed.
That's the verse.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you remember about her? You don't remember that much about her?
She wasn't well, and she was somewhat crippled. I never did know how she became crippled, and she was awful grumpy. She couldn't get along with nobody. Sometimes she'd go stay with my brother, and they fall out and she can move back to the house, and she stay get mad again, and she'd go back and stay with my husband. And she and her husband had divorced, and she had one son, and Papa took him when he was about 2 months old and raised him.
Okay, you want to take a break?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll take a break.
Okay, we got 30